with Central Asia. There is a critical evidence of human movement through mountain passes into Kashmir Valley. In primitive Kashmiri society, when people began to understand the procreation process and its necessity, they felt that women could not produce anything on their own without participation of male members. To legitimize this practice and to make people understand the necessity of the process of procreation and for justification of this activity, fertility ritual evolved, wherein goddess was married to the male god Shiva. The female energy, Shakti, could not have produced anything without the participation of the male god Shiva. Here, I would like to mention that this word Shiva or Shaiva was basically for the first time used in Saviteshwara Upanishad, but otherwise, in fact, if we look at the local tradition, it was simply a phallic worship. It was then that phallic found expression into stone lingam and yoni, which people worshipped at popular level. These forms of worship survived even to this day, since Shiva was supposed to have combined the power of destruction and showering bounty. The other deities and gods were relatively less important than him in this region too. The phallic worship in its original form, with a desire to perpetuate the different species of animal kingdom in all its interdependence, along with sun as source of life and prime nourisher of human fertility, was very early practice in Kashmir. It was clothed in magico-tantric practices, which subsequently developed into tantric rituals in Kashmir. Such theistic practices were universal. In fact, in my address, I have given complete detail in local civilization of Akkad, Assyria, Egypt, and many other societies, how similar tendencies and similar traditions continued. It is thus evident that doctrine of reciprocal principles of nature or active and passive male-female was recognized in nearly all the primitive religious systems, thus proving not only the wide extent of doctrine, but also its separate and independent origin, springing from those innate principles which are common to human nature in all climate and races. Hence, the almost universal reverence paid to the images of sexual parts, as they were regarded as symbols and types of generative and productive principles in nature, and of those gods and goddesses who were the representatives of the same principles. The phallus and the setis, the lingam and the yoni, the special parts contributing to generation and production, becoming the symbols of those active and passive causes, could not but become objects of reverence and worship. The union of the two symbolized the creative energy of all nature, for almost all primitive religion consisted in reverence and worship paid to the nature and its operations. We must remember that it was out of such an environment that the religious outlook of Kashmiris evolved for perceiving the world around them. Their institutions of worship, their beliefs grew, and rituals evolved. However, as time passed on, their all societal institutions went through various transitions and transformations. This also indicates clearly that the existence of prototype of god Shiva among the trans-Himalayan other regions and societies much before the idea was imported into Kashmir. The phallic worship and the cult of fertility was very early conceived of by Kashmiris. It was clothed in magico-tantric practices, which subsequently developed into cumbersome but innumerable tantric rituals and tantra shastra in Kashmir. Kashmir's interaction with various other cultures, societies, religions, and ethnic groups such as Kushans, Yavanas, Greeks, Phalvas, Parthians, Tokharians, Hunas, Persians, Turks, Mongols, who entered Kashmir in pre-Islamic period, accompanied accompanying invading armies or as traders or as fugitives or otherwise, their conception of God and theistic ideas shaped the texture of religion in Kashmir too. In the late 1st century BC, the Kushans extended their core area to Gandhara, which extended from Kabul Valley to Swat Valley. From this base, they ruled the northern plains of southern Asia up to South Asia, up to Kashmir and Ganges, Yamuna Dab for the first 3 centuries AD, at times even as far as Magda. Here I would like to mention that when you look at these details, in fact, in Kashmir, we have one of the tantric groups. If you go through Sanskrit literature, we find one of the tantric groups mainly which is coming from Swat region. There is another tantric group which comes from Balochistan, that is Hinglaj region. It's a misnomer to say that everything is indigenous and everything is autochthonous and so on. However, the migration of various ethnic groups from various parts of Central Asia, including Vedic Aryans, and the interaction with Chinese, Parthians, Scythians, Persians, and Greco-Bactrians and others, Kashmiris evolved an elaborate polytheism. While keeping their own traditions and rituals intact, they incorporated various other theological concepts as well. For example, the Aryans prayed to their gods for plenty of rain, abundant harvests, and prolific cattle, for bold vigor, life, long life, numerous progenies, and protection against all foes and robbers, such as cattle lifting aborigines. Their gods appear to have been more abstractions, personifications of those powers of nature on whom they relied for good harvests. If you look at even in interesting factor, one finds here that apart from Shaivism, there are many of these aspects which came with the Aryans that have been incorporated even into Islam locally, in fact. This is a fact of history, not only in Kashmir, but all over prehistoric primitive world. The tribal societies have had contacts with other cultures outside their habitat, and these played significant role in their material development. All these theistic ideas and influences from outside the region did travel to Kashmir from time to time. Consequently, the stone and wooden symbols of various gods and goddesses came up as emblems for worship in various parts of the very, very early. In fact, one of the earliest evidence, historical evidence, apart from archaeological evidence, we find is provided in Rajatarangni when Kanhala says, to protect forsooth the Nagas who came to seek shelter, afraid of Garuda, it has stretched out of its arms high above in the guise of mountain veil.